What are we reviewing today? Oh, an Xbox exclusive. Oh, I wanted to play a good game for once. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Oliver. And I feel like I'm one of the only people who really likes Gears of War. And as much as Microsoft like to parade it around like it's the greatest franchise ever, you don't really see anybody talking about it. People often compare it to Call of Duty and label it as another cover shooter, but you couldn't be any more wrong. Gears of War was awesome. There's a reason this game started the cover shooter trend, and it's still the best cover shooter ever made. It was a big dumb action movie that was constantly moving on to the next idea, the enemy variety, the guns, the characters, the set pieces. It felt like a fucking war. And oh my god, the music, when you were fighting, the music was just like bam 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 bam. Then, of course, Epic Games left the series and then went on to do their own thing. And then Gears 4 happened. Now, I'm not going to get into every issue Gears 4 had, but its two biggest issues was it wasn't exciting for a number of reasons, and the writing at times was just flat out bad. It felt like someone mimicking a Gears of War game than an actual Gears of War game. I still can't believe you actually fixed it, not entirely, but it's still leagues above Gears 4, and it was the first Xbox exclusive I've played in I don't know how long that didn't make me want to blow my head off. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, once again, hope runs deep. You're going to realize right off the bat that the level design here is like a night and day difference to Gears 4. This feels like a Gears game. It's got that familiar feeling of warfare the originals had. Running through the streets with your fellow COG members has never looked better. Old dark derelict buildings, beautiful horizons, and obsessive amounts of machinery all make a return here, making each level feel varied enough to where it always feels fresh. I've always admired Gears for adding details such as giving you a very limited HUD and dropping the camera to the floor when you run. Doing stuff like this really immerses you and makes you feel like you're in a war. Sound design is once again excellent. The fact that I know what monster is around the corner simply by hearing it is not easy to pull off, and I've always enjoyed hearing the growling voices of the Locust communicating on the other side of the battlefield. I have absolutely no complaints about the way Gears 5 looks. Everything here has a ridiculous amount of polish, and to top it off, yes, it's a Gears game, so of course the soundtrack is going to be one of the best things you've ever heard. Steve Jablonsky isn't composing this time around, but they've done a very good job at getting the feeling of the original soundtrack right. I will say though, the gore explosion noise, while satisfying, is a bit over the top. It sounds like someone jumping into a pool full of jelly. The story, however, while an improvement, still has an issue with hooking you, and a lot of that is down to the characters. Much like Gears 4, the character models, the performances, and the facial capture is all spectacular here, but they still just don't understand how to get you to care about them. The writing in Gears 4 was
slashes its way out of its cage, and then it's new and beautiful.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, but really the issue was that these characters were dislikable. You know you fucked up when you find the character you're playing as extremely annoying. Thankfully, the characters in Gears 5 are no longer trying to mimic the Uncharted series. These feel like real people, and I didn't want them to die this time, which is a plus from me.
Hang on a second, shitstick.
Shitstick? Del, theories?
I don't know. Maybe a stick made out of shit?
Or a stick used to stir up shit.
Okay, maybe it's not completely fixed, but they've definitely toned it down. They've started to write these characters as actual Gears of War characters now, and they've done an alright job. I do like the thing with Marcus and his son. Marcus Phoenix feels like Marcus Phoenix, just without all the yelling.
You and your tower and all this fucking emotion can go to hell!
And his son has an interesting character arc as well. The main character this time around isn't James though. The story centers around Kate and her trying to discover more about her family. The issue though is that I don't care too much about her. I'm interested in what she's discovering as the world here delves deeper into the origins of the COG and the Locust, but her as an actual person I'm supposed to care about, the game right from the beginning just expects you to care, so I think they could have done that better. Del's character is simply just, yeah, sure, okay, and that's about it. There's also the stereotypical British character. Yeah, I'm the British character. I talk like this, and I say fuck off a lot. Ah, fuck off! The issue with the story just being okay is that the cutscenes in this game are pretty damn long, and in a game all about action, they start to drag if you're not that invested in the story. One thing I absolutely love about Gears 5 though is that they've kept true to this universe. No one here is really a good guy. Mankind has been thrusted into a horrible situation, so barely anybody gets along. There are fan servicey parts, but they've made sure they fit in. Overall, this feels like the Gears universe, which is all you really had to do. You see, the reason Gears 4 and 5 stories have turned out the way they have is because you're trying to write an Uncharted game, an adventure story basically, and if you go back and look at the original trilogy and the way it was written, those games had a real dark tone to them. The characters weren't cracking jokes and talking about their feelings and crying because they were fighting an unwinnable war against horrible monsters. As a Gears fan, Gears 5 lacks that grittiness the old ones had. The old Gears series had an emphasis on brutal combat and a very dark and serious tone. I don't think there is a game series that captured warfare this damn well. I won't hold it against the game because I said leading up to this game, they're obviously taking the series in a different direction, so we're never going to get that feeling of true warfare back. Basically what I'm saying is, yes, I miss the old Gears of War and sure you can be upset about it, but I'm not going to criticize the game for it because yes, you can draw comparisons between games in a series, but you should always analyze a game as its own thing. I wouldn't suggest you go back to the way the others were written either because you're already too far in, and I truly believe the story you're telling here can work in this universe. Your issue is that you just need to write better characters and you win. So how's the gameplay? Well, holy shit. Gears is fucking back. It's still the best cover shooter ever made. No other cover shooter comes close to how well this gameplay loop is designed. Gears of War's gameplay was great because it didn't waste your time moving to the next encounter or introducing the next idea. They stopped the game from ever getting stale by introducing a new location, a new enemy, some awesome set piece. The game was a non-stop roller coaster. Basically, Gears wasn't about this.
And then it's new and beautiful.
It was about this.
Take cover or die.
Gears 5 has figured it out and is much better because of it. There are plenty of memorable locations and epic moments, and most of it is all done through gameplay. Gears 4 desperately needed its own giant worm, something to distinctly remember, and Gears 5 has fixed this issue. There's plenty of moments both scripted and unscripted that work incredibly well and are a lot of fun. The cover shooting in Gears of War works so well thanks to how well it controls. Popping in and out of cover is incredibly easy, and things like rolling and running to the next spot is fast and fluid. The enemy design and variety here is what makes Gears' combat though. When you do gameplay like this, you need variables, and a lot of them, because your game will get stale real quick without them. Having a large catalogue of weapons and enemies to choose from allows you to mix and match them together, making every fight feel unique, and thanks to how well it's designed, every battle feels like a war. Gears 5 brings back familiar weapons and enemies, but also introduces some new ones along the way. They're not a big addition, but it's nice to see some new ideas. One thing Gears has always been good at is putting pressure on the player and not allowing you to breathe. This is also thanks to the enemy design. Some enemies sit from afar and can one-shot you, others will run right at you, and all of this will happen at once, so if you pop up to shoot at something running at you, you better make sure that sniper isn't looking directly at you or your head's coming off. There are the big powerful but slow enemies that'll lay down suppressing fire while the lesser threats will run in and flank you. This is how you design a cover shooter and I love it. And thank God they got rid of the stupid robot enemies and the tower defense sections. This is why I'm so blown away, because they actually listened. Unlike a lot of reboots, they understood the source material. Hell, even George played it and he hates everything. Hey George, what did you think of it? I will say my only problem with the shooting is that there are no hit markers and health bars above the enemies, but you can turn them off, so I won't take points off you for that. But just don't put them in. It's a good way to break immersion and remove tension, as you know how close to death an enemy is. If you're going to do that, show how much damage the enemy has taken visually. Also, the friendly AI are dumb as bricks, but then again they always have been. You're dumb, I hope you die, you killed me like so many times! But I wish I could say it was perfect and it was the greatest Gears game to date, but I can't because of course it's not perfect. Act 1 is wonderful and reminds me a lot of the old Gears games, but sadly Act 2 reminds me of Gears of War 4. It's not at that level and still has some good parts, but there's a fair amount of downtime and is a hell of a lot less exciting than Act 1, which messes up the pace a bit. The reason for this downtime and the reason the story's pace is a little off is because somebody, I don't know who, Microsoft, decided, you know what Gears needs? An open world setting and a progression system. Why? It's not entirely open world though. Act 2 and 3 are open-ended levels that have secondary locations that you can explore if you want to. These secondary locations reward you with components for Jack, your AI companion, that you can upgrade so it can help you better in combat, which we'll get to later. The vehicle you use to get around controls wonderfully, so I will say that, and I also love the little detail where if you drive around for long enough, they'll start singing sea shanties.
Windy weather, boys, stormy weather, boys, when the wind blows, we're all together.
Okay, maybe I made that last part up. The best way to sum up this whole open world aspect is that it has the same problem Metro Exodus did. Anytime you're not in the open world and the game is in a closed off linear section much like the previous games in the series, it's way better. Thankfully, the side stuff here doesn't last longer than 10 minutes, but first off, it doesn't offer anything new and it's not worth it, because your progression system isn't that important. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely understand why the progression system isn't a big deal, because you don't want that to take over and overcomplicate Gears' already wonderful combat, but don't you see the issue here? I'm not going to tell you how to improve it, I'm going to tell you to just remove the open world stuff, because this is Gears of War. Anytime you're not shooting something, the game's at a disadvantage. Regarding the progression system, you don't have to remove it if you don't want to, because what you have here works, but it's not really all that useful, nor does it add much to the combat. Because the upgrades aren't that great, the side stuff here isn't worth it, so now you have two aspects of the game that are supposed to complement each other, but they both don't have enough attention put into them to work. What I'm saying is, if you truly believe this is something that can work in future games, then go for it, but just understand Gears doesn't need it. Don't feel pressured to add a progression system simply because every other game has one, because you could end up sabotaging the whole experience. I'm looking at you, Control. I'm looking at you, Rage 2. I'm looking at you, Ubisoft. I'm looking at you. Everybody, stop it! Stop putting progression systems and everything, I'm sick of it! Talking about what Jack actually does feeds into my next major issue with Gears 5. The game was way too easy. Gears 4 had this exact same problem, which is that insane difficulty is too hardcore for most people, but the difficulty below it is way too easy. Challenge is a great way to make your game engaging. As I always say, I'd rather play a game that's unrealistically hard than a game that's mind-numbingly easy. One of the things I've always praised the original Gears trilogy for was how it handled difficulty, and I'm not going to get too into it, but I'm going to point out why this is the easiest Gears game yet. First off, there is just way too much ammo and weapons everywhere. There were so few times I ran out of ammo or didn't have any good weapons. You were pretty much loaded for the whole game, whereas in the original, finding a big gun was eventful because the game never gave them to you all the time. It doesn't help that Jack himself has a taser that he can use to stun and damage enemies, along with his ability to pick up weapons. You no longer need to go out of your way and clear a path to the ammo crate. Oh no, Jack will just bring it to you, allowing you to sit there at the back of the arena all safe. Not only this, but later in the game, Jack gets an ability to turn an enemy to your side, and this can be almost any enemy you want, so when you see a really powerful enemy, just mind control it and sit back and watch. Jesus, I thought I was playing Gears of War, not Gears of Snore. Oh, come on, it was funny. Enemies don't push you anywhere near as hard as they used to. The shotgun guys from the previous Gears games that were super deadly now just slowly walk towards you. In the other games, enemies would actively suppress and flank you, making every fight feel stressful, which happens in Gears 5 but nowhere near to the extent of the previous games. Also, just remove Revive from the game when you're playing single player, or at least put it only on the easy difficulty. When you go down, the enemies just ignore you until your friend picks you back up, which encourages this mad reckless behavior of running in with a shotgun. Personally, I played on Insane, as I have for all of these games, and this one is by far the easiest. Like Gears 4 was way harder than this, but I still wouldn't recommend Insane unless you're, well, insane. I know I just talked about nothing but negatives for the last 5 minutes, but in the whole grand scheme of things, it's not a big issue. Sure, the open world is unnecessary, the writing is iffy, the game doesn't run very well, it's kind of easy, but what matters about Gears is its combat and its levels, and you've really done a great job. Ooh, 7.5, man. It still blows my mind that they actually fixed it. I knew there was a chance going in, but I didn't think it was actually gonna happen. I really did enjoy my time with Gears 5, and it's an easy recommend for full price. Or you could just do what I do and get an Xbox Game Pass for £2. Like, I'm not sponsored or anything, it's just generally a great deal. Like, Microsoft, how do you make money off of this? I do have to mention there are some horrible microtransactions in the multiplayer, like there's a thumbs up emote that costs $10. Here's my emote, Microsoft, and this one's for free. You know, it's fun to compare the Gears series and the Halo series together, considering they were in a very similar position. But it's interesting to see how one developer figured it out, and the other developer just hasn't a clue. So that's all for me, and man, I don't know what's up with me lately, man. It's like I got some sort of insane amount of energy, like someone just shot me with adrenaline or something. I mean, you could call it an awakening of sorts. You could call it a surge too.